My next question is that we are speaking about diabetes, and it seems like you're all saying that we should avoid cookies with sugar and ice cream and processed food and white flour and honey and agave nectar and smoothies with sugar and all that. So then the obvious question that I've asked hundreds of times, I keep asking it because it's just the obvious question is, okay, so where do we go with the subject of fruit? And I guess, Dr. Cousens, I've asked Brenda and Brian and Anna Marie this. In other words, if we're saying, on one hand, the whole world is saying fruits and vegetables are fantastic and fruits grow, so they seem like the most natural thing, yet Brian Clement has said, and Anna Marie, that the fruit's been hybridized, and because it's been hybridized and picked unripe, that it's really not an all-you-can-eat thing. So in terms of diabetes, where do you stand on fruit?
So there's about 8 studies out there that I reviewed, and really, they weren't as clear as we would like it, but there's only 3 fruits that seem not to raise blood sugar. Blueberries, bilberries, and green apples. That's it. That's what all the 8 studies are suggesting. All the rest have some effect, negative effect on the blood sugar. So that's what the studies show, just as a way of thinking about it. Personally, I have very, very little fruit in my diet for just the reasons we're talking about.
And, the thing that I'd like to point out here, when you're dealing with a blood sugar problem, it makes only really good sense, medical sense and common sense, not to give any form of sugar that will raise it. And so that's what we choose to do.
Well, I do too. I'm sorry. I didn't make that point.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if you don't have diabetes.
Exactly. And by the way, as we've pointed out the other day, I mean, the fruit, she picks 300 to 400 pounds of wild fruit that's ripe every year. I'm going to come up to her house and start eating. Now, that's a whole different thing, and the sugar content's probably 1/10 of what it would be.
But that's only for non-diabetics. For diabetics, no fruit.
Yeah, no fruit at all.
So just to clarify, Gabriel, if someone has blood sugar issues, whether they're pre-diabetic, assume they're pre-diabetic, should they be eating blueberries?
Sin fruta.
Say again?
No fruit.
No fruta. You hear?
You
better stop at
I
a
said it
fruta.
in Spanish. I'm sorry. No fruit.
You eat a fruit and we're going to come and get you.
Done. Only if you don't have diabetes and your blood sugar's consistently less than 100 are those 3 what I'm talking about: blueberries, bilberries, and green apples.
Not to say they have none, they just have by far the least.
So I have a little different experience, and I think in our program, for example, in the Marshall Islands, we include moderate amounts of fruits and still see complete reversal of diabetes all the time. I have friends that run a Mastering Diabetes Summit and have a Mastering Diabetes program. They're getting reversal in people with actually quite a high fruit diet. So I think that there are so many different perspectives, and we're seeing success with so many different ways of going about this. I think the bottom line is we completely agree on we need to get rid of animal products. We shouldn't be using any concentrated sweeteners and all of that. We have a little bit of a difference in our use of fruit in diabetes treatment programs. And so just so you know that we're not all 100% on the same wavelength where fruit is concerned.
So are you talking about fruit in the United States or outside the United States?
I hate to say this, but the fruit in the Marshall Islands, a lot of it comes from the United States or Australia or other countries. It's just very small islands.
So the question I'm kind of asking is, as I mentioned, outside the United States, which is a first world country, and you have far more degeneration going on, that what you can do in third world countries is they have far less degeneration. So
not the Marshall Islands, though. They have one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world.
Yes, they do. But I'm making a kind of different point.
Let me try to reframe what I think Gabriel is saying. That we have several generations. We're in our 4th generation of degradation now, where I happen to be in the South Pacific a lot in the past. And I would probably tell you that it's maybe the 2nd generation of degradation there. So each generation, our organ systems, our pancreas, our entire body's chemistry alters and gets worse. So the volatility and vulnerability in the Marshall Islands to a little bit of sugar is wildly different than a European or an American that we started to eat sugar 100 years ago. So that may be the difference. And I would really question the long-term outcomes of people who were taking lots of fruit. We did all of that, by the way. So what you're suggesting your friends do.
Not suggesting lots of fruit.
Okay.
Very moderate amounts.
But let's tell you.
The friends, the mastering
Yeah,
diabetes.
not you. I know not you. You eat you eat the kind of diet I like, a very sensible diet. So she eats pretty much like we do. And what's funny, we all come to the same conclusion after you do this long enough. We don't sit and talk to one another and scheme and say, let's all eat the same thing to tell people. But we all arrive at the same thing because we know what fuels us. But your friends, let me challenge this a bit. And I want to have another way to look at it, not to say that you're wrong or they're right and I'm right. We did a lot of fruit. So when people came to us for the last 62 years, we did an awful lot of fruit at the beginning. It was a fun diet to come to. Everyone was high. We were running around, giving you carrot juice, giggling all day long. And people with diabetes were not getting well. So it was a rare thing they were getting well. Today, I don't see people who can't get well eating a green, high-protein diet. This is a high-protein diet, digestible, usable protein. By the way, if you look at the usability, digestibility, absorbability, we're by far the highest protein diet on the planet Earth. And protein regulates blood sugar. So we haven't talked about how to reverse it. Why it's reversing is you're getting absorbable amino acids that go into the cell and regulate blood. It acts like a magnet for sugar. Well, we'll answer questions at the end. Yes.
And I think most of us are so worried about change. Oh, you have to change, you have to do something different. What is the big deal if I, for the next 2 years, stay out of fruit? You know, what's the big deal? Because usually in 2 years, I have seen the recovery it's so good that then I can go back and I can have my blueberries, blackberries, apples, and kiwis, and, you know, I'm not going to have the high sugar fruits. But so what's the big deal? I think we have to put aside this thing. Oh my God, I'm going to change. 2 years. Look back 2 years. What was 2 years? I mean, there's 2018. I mean, I feel like it's 2016. It's like, it's so fast. But you are really doing this recovery in that time. And that's the time most people need to be very, very strict. And that's 60 years. And between all of us, I mean, we have like, what do you say, Steve?
Almost 200 years.
200 years experience. What's 2 years? And just say, okay, if that works for so many people, that if I'm staying out of fruit, I'm staying out of all animal products, and I'm getting into green juices and big salads and adding sprouts to it, what's the big deal? And I get my supplements like blue-green algae, and I get chlorella, and I get B12. You know, I add these things that will help me in the journey. Chlorella, if you come to the Institute, you see our guests, they're eating chlorella like candy, because it really helps that sugar craving, and it gives you sugar, but it's from
Not only
from
for
carbs.
diabetes, overeaters like I was. I could see people watching out around the world saying, oh, I'd rather die. I'd rather eat fruit than 2 years of no fruit. I would have been there at one point, believe me.